few more minutes. That's what the devil wants the church to do. That's what the devil wants you who are the church to do. Just keep sleeping a few more minutes. Don't get excited. Don't do anything rash. Don't do anything that would embarrass you at the country club. Don't do anything that would embarrass yourselves. Just keep sleeping. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. That's exactly what happened in Germany. And it's suddenly, at some moment, it's like, boom, game over. If Gulliver tries to get up after a certain moment, he can't move. If he had awakened a few minutes before that, he could have ripped up the stakes. But if the church sleeps a little longer. Now, this actually happened in Germany. I'm here to tell you, and you know, if you read the Bonhoeffer book or you know history, you know what happened. That at some point, Bonhoeffer reckons it was about 1935, it was over. The church struggle was over. They had lost because by sleeping they had enabled evil to enact enough laws and to get enough power that it's over. And he knew that. And that's the question, where are we in America today? We are very, very, very close to that point today in America. We don't have 5 years. I think that a lot of American Christians think, hey, listen, we'll be fine. The pendulum swings back and forth, we'll be fine. I'm here to tell you that's not right. How I wish it were. But there were many Germans that thought, we're going to be fine. Hitler's a one-term Führer, no problem. Well, they were horribly, horribly wrong. And when they woke up to the nightmare that they had enabled, their silence and their inaction enabled evil to come not just into Germany, but through all of Europe. It was the church's job to stand against it. They blew it. They didn't. And to give you a fact, some of you know the story, is that the most faithful Christians, when they saw the Nazis rising to power, they saw ideologically the Nazis are at war with us. They're at war with what we believe. They're trying to take over the church and trying to bully the church. And so they wrote something called the Barmen Declaration. And there were about 18,000 Lutheran pastors in Germany, and about 6,000 maybe signed the Barmen Declaration. But by 1935, they had been so intimidated, just as many Christians have been intimidated in this country by a militarized FBI. Wicked things in America that you never would dream would happen in the United States of America, that the government would be used in this way against its own citizens. That was happening in Germany like crazy, and enough were horrified that they began to shut up. They began to say, well, I don't want any trouble. So by 1935, 2 years after Hitler took power, you have basically 3,000 of the 18,000 Lutheran pastors. 18,000 Lutheran pastors. So you have about 3,000 willing to stand firmly against the Nazis. 3,000 with the courage to stand against the evil of the Nazis. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got about 3,000 pastors that are kind of like the equivalent of the woke, super loony pastors today that believe anything and they're not biblical and whatever. You can just forget about them. You have, 3,000 ultra pro-Hitler pastors in Germany, that confused. But the key is in the middle. You have 12,000 pastors in Germany who basically said, you know what? We're going to be neutral. We're not going to choose. We don't want any trouble. We'll put up the swastika. We'll do what we need to do. We're patriotic Germans. We don't want any trouble. That spirit is alive in the American church. And it is that 12,000 those 12,000 pastors in the middle, they determine where things go. If they understood that they were sitting on the fence and that the devil owns the fence, so to pretend that you don't need to choose, that you don't need to get into the battle, you don't need to get involved in all that controversial stuff. Oh, don't ever mention J6. Don't get into the transgender stuff. God forbid you mention, the vaccines. Don't get into that stuff. Just keep your mouth shut and preach the gospel. They believed that. But what happened was their silence in the face of these things created what was called a spiral of silence, right? If you shut up, your neighbor's going to be more inclined to shut up because we don't want to rock the boat. And it led to horrors. Now imagine if you were a Christian in Germany in 1933 or 34, and you knew that by not speaking against these evils, that you open the door to the Holocaust, to the death camps, to millions of men, women, and children being murdered systematically. Imagine if you knew in 33 and 34 what actually was coming. Would you have spoken up? Most of them would have if they knew what was coming. But they could have the excuse, well, we don't know which way it's going to go. And I think there are many hoping today in the American church, I don't know, I don't want to stick my neck out too much. I might offend a big tither in the congregation, and then we won't be able to pay our heating bills, and so I can't talk about that. Well, I think we're at that moment, folks, where we have to understand that playing it safe is the most dangerous, reckless madness we could ever do at this point. We're at that point in the American church. The idea that we're not supposed to be political, I'm simply here to tell you it's just nonsense. Now, the idea that we're not supposed to make an idol of politics, we know we're not supposed to make an idol of politics. Are we supposed to make an idol of anything? No. So I'm not supposed to make an idol of loving my wife or my family, but I'm supposed to love my wife or my family. I'm not supposed to make an idol of loving my country, but I should be patriotic. But you're told if you love your country and you care about what happens to America, oh, you're just a Christian nationalist. Well, I'm here to tell you, that term was just invented by the devil to silence the Church of Jesus Christ. It's absolutely nonsense. I mean, when you think about it, the idea of being political, right? Imagine Wilberforce, my hero, William Wilberforce. There's a book out there that I wrote about the life of William Wilberforce, Amazing Grace. He stood against the satanic evil of the slave trade. How did he do it? As a politician. I think he was getting kind of political. His faith in Jesus Christ said that he would do anything he could for the sake of the African slaves. It was God's will that he do anything he could, including using the gift of living in a country where he could use politics to do the right thing. We have that in this country. We have the ability politically to do the right thing. And when somebody says, oh, don't be political, don't get political from the pulpit. Listen, when you're talking about slavery, would you keep your mouth shut about slavery? Many pastors did. Would you? What about the civil rights movement? We think that was a good thing. That came out of the churches. They were being political. Many people said, oh, you're being political. We don't do that. We just preach the gospel. We just do church. If you're going to a church where they just do church, for the sake of your soul, get out of that church. Some of you know the story. It's probably an apocryphal story, but the image, okay, is that in Germany, there was a church not far from the train tracks. This may have happened, I don't know. A friend of mine made a film about it. But the point is that as the boxcars going to the death camps, filled with Jews, were passing by, the screams of the Jews, depending on which version of the story you hear, but the point is that the pastor told the congregation, just sing your hymns louder so we don't have to hear this. And that's a perfect picture of what the devil wants us to do. You're singing hymns to Jesus. What could be wrong with that? Well, you're doing it to drown out the voice of human beings created in his image for whom he died, who are suffering. And God has called you to deal with that. He doesn't say don't sing hymns. But Bonhoeffer actually did say, don't sing hymns if you're not speaking up for the Jews. In other words, if you dare to say I'm a Christian and you worship God, you better live like it. And that's an example where the church could have, but didn't. They said, we just want to do church. And it sounds so pious, it sounds so wonderful. We just want to do church, we just want to preach the gospel, we just want to sing songs. Well, the world is going to hell outside of your church building. And God has appointed you and equipped you to go deal with that. You are his answer to that evil. And so that spirit is in the American church today. And I really believe we're in a similar position where, I talk about that there are 12,000 pastors in the middle. You don't need to get all 12,000 pastors to join the 3,000 heroes, but if you could get 3,000 or 5,000 of those 12,000 to understand, you know what? We made a mistake. We made a mistake. We're going to repent. We're going to get political. We're going to speak against evil. We're going to speak against the transgender madness because human beings depend on those of us in the church to speak against this satanic evil. Lives are being destroyed. Families are being ripped apart. Children are being taken away from their parents because the parents refuse to affirm them in the gender, in the madness that they picked up in the school, paid for with the parents' tax money. If that doesn't outrage you, if that doesn't make you say, I need to do something about this. You know, many pagans are already doing something about this. Shame on the church that pagans see these things and are taking action. The Lord expects us to lead the way because we claim to believe that He defeated death on the cross and we have no fear.